What's up guys, it's Tommy here and welcome to a very interesting Liverpool video where we will talk about why Liverpool haven't bought many players in this transfer window. We will take an in-depth look at Liverpool's finances and why Liverpool are hesitant right now to dip into the transfer market further, but we still have the sneaky feeling that one or two players will be coming in before the transfer window closes. Remember, the transfer window closes on October the 6th, and also Liverpool will sell quite a few players as well to generate transfer funds. So guys, make sure to listen to this video in detail if you want to know the in-depth of Liverpool's finances. And also Jurgen Klopp came out with a very interesting interview where he fired shots at Manchester City and other clubs run by whole countries. And also this is what Jurgen Klopp said: for some clubs it seems less important how uncertain the future is, owned by countries, owned by oligarchs. That's the truth. We are a different kind of club at Liverpool. These are the words of Jurgen Klopp, and of course he is referring to Chelsea, run by an oligarch, Roman Abramovich. He's referring to Manchester City, run by a whole country, the United Arab Emirates, and also he's referring to probably PSG, who is run by another country, Qatar. So yeah, in these times Liverpool are run as a self-sustainable club, and we can only spend money that we earn through various different revenue sources. And Chelsea, run by Russian oligarch, spent a total of £230 million in the transfer window because they had a transfer embargo, and also they sold Morata and Eden Hazard, and those two transfers combined brought in more than £200 million. So actually Chelsea's net spend is not that high. Of course Manchester City are always going to spend money after the financial fair play breach of got overturned at the Court of Arbitration for Sport. So it just makes a mockery of FFP now, and Man City are just free to spend basically almost whatever money they want. And also Jurgen Klopp said this: we got to the Champions League final 2 years ago, we won it last year, we became Premier League champions last season by being the club we are. We cannot change it overnight. I say, now we want to behave like Chelsea, now we want to behave like Man City. They are signing a lot of players, that can be an advantage, but that means that they have to fit all those new players together. You cannot bring in the 11 best players in the world and just hope a week later they play the best football ever. It's about working on the training ground. That will probably be actually an advantage to us at Liverpool. We have worked quite a while with each other, so we know each other, we know what to do on the pitch. And yeah, actually Liverpool playing Chelsea in game week 2 of the Premier League is actually an advantage to play Chelsea so early, because they can't gel. A whole team of like half a team of new signings can't gel together so early on. So hopefully Liverpool can take advantage of that and we can beat Chelsea early on at their ground. But I think that Chelsea in the long run will be title contenders either this season or next season, because the amount of incredible players that they brought in. I think that if Frank Lampard doesn't challenge for the title with that squad, with those kind of players, then he will be sacked by Roman Abramovich. So that's an interesting scenario to look at, I think. So now we will take an in-depth, detailed look at Liverpool's finances and why Liverpool haven't spent big money on new transfers in the summer transfer window. So to date, Liverpool have only spent £12 million on Konstantinos Tsimikas. For example, Chelsea spent more than £230 million, Manchester City spent 71 million, Tottenham spent 59 million, Man United 35 million, and Tottenham I think spent 31 million. Actually Liverpool have made 3 million net in sales, because we sold more players for more money than we brought in. Last season it was a similar story. Liverpool only spent 9 million, mainly Takumi Minamino signed from Salzburg. So the gross spend over the last 2 seasons is just £21 million, while the net sales are 31 million. So we are actually in 10 million pounds profit in terms of our net spend, and that's why many Liverpool fans have been disgruntled. Liverpool fans don't want 100 million pound signings, but they want actually one or two 30 million pound signings just to strengthen the squad. But in terms of purchases, this is way behind the rest of the big six, because listen to this: the last 2 years of spending, Chelsea spent 270 million pounds. Their sales have been 250, so that makes up for it. Man United though spent 230 million pounds, and they sold players for 73 million. So Man United's net spend is 155 million pounds, which is absolutely huge. And considering the Man United only barely just made the top four, it's a massive failure on their part. Man City spent 221 million in the last 2 seasons, and they sold players for 103 million. So again, a net spend of 118 million pounds. Tottenham spent players worth 192 million, and they sold players worth for 70 million. So Tottenham's net spend is 122 million. Arsenal sold players for 48 million, but Arsenal spent 175 million pounds. Arsenal, who are not even in the Champions League for the last 4 seasons running, and that just shows that at Liverpool there is something going on. So Arsenal's net spend is 127 million pounds. So this is somewhat puzzling, given that Liverpool have been highly profitable in recent years. So let's actually look at what is behind their revenue growth and the impact on the bottom line of finances, as well as the last published accounts. We will take a broader view and take an in-depth look of the last 3 years of Liverpool's finances. So Liverpool posted an impressive 42 million pound pre-tax profit in 2019, which meant 207 million pounds profits over the last 3 years, because we had a 40 million profit in 2017 and 125 million profit in 2018. This was the second highest in the Premier League in that period, only surpassed by Tottenham's 278 million, but twice as much as the next highest, Man United, 110 million. And wow, it's actually very impressive that Tottenham in the last 3 years boasted a profit of 278 million, but still Liverpool with a very healthy overall 207 million pound profit over the last few years. I think that's actually very good. But it is worth noting that this 207 million pre-tax profit is entirely due to the profit on player sales, which is the same amount, 207 million. Excluding these profits, Liverpool would have broken even. So we would have basically spent as much as we generated. Liverpool have spent everything they earned on expenses. Revenue, 1,353 million pounds, and the operating expenses was 1,338 million pounds plus interest in the last 3 years. So basically, if you exclude player transfers, we earned as much money as we spent. So to reinforce this point, Liverpool's operating profit was just 1 million in 2019 and 15 million over the last 3 years. That said, most football clubs actually lose money at the operating level, though Tottenham and Man United are exceptions to the rule, with 205 million and 120 million respectively over the last 3 years. So yeah, Man City had an operating loss of 74 million in the last 3 years. Arsenal had an operating loss of 28 million, and Chelsea, listen to this, Chelsea had an operating loss of 263 million pounds, but they made that up with player sales. Tottenham had an operating profit of 205 million, and Man United an operating profit of 120 million, which is very impressive. So basically, the overall picture is that the player sales have been a very important part of Liverpool's financial strategy, generating 207 million pounds profits from this activity over the last 3 years, and that was only surpassed by Chelsea, who generated 243 million pound profit, but far higher than the rest of the big six, because Arsenal generated just 139 million, Tottenham 124 million, Manchester City 112 million, and Man United only generated 55 million pounds from player sales. So this is not the net spend, this is just the player sales, the money that Liverpool generated from selling players. That is 207 million, and we are second only to Chelsea. And what is very significant as well is that Liverpool's revenue has shot up by 231 million pounds, which is a 77% increase in the last 3 years, from 302 million to 533 million. So the difference is that 230 million. This is the second highest growth in the big six, only behind Tottenham, who actually started off on a low base, but it is still third highest in England, below Manchester United and Manchester City. In fact, over 3 years they have earned 445 million and 156 million more than Liverpool FC. So the revenue for the last 3 years is 1.3 billion for Liverpool, for Man City it's 1.5 billion, and for Man United it's 1.8 billion. So Liverpool are third in that category. Liverpool's matchday revenue has grown by 35%. It has grown by 22 million pounds in the last 3 years. So it went from 62 million to 84 million. Mainly due to the Anfield expansion of the main stand. This is the second highest in the big six, only surpassed by Tottenham, basically due to their new stadium and also playing at Wembley during the construction. The other clubs basically didn't really grow their matchday revenue by much. So Tottenham grew it by 41 million, Liverpool by 22 million, Man United only by 4 million, Man City only by 2 million, and actually Chelsea and Arsenal's matchday revenue decreased by 3 and 4 million respectively. One of the main sources of income for Liverpool FC and their finances is the broadcasting revenue, and it has grown quite considerably. It has actually more than doubled, from 124 million to 261 million in the last 3 years. That's a 137 million pound growth in the broadcasting revenue, which is the highest in England. Second is actually Tottenham. They grew by 134 million. Man United grew by 101 million. Man City's broadcasting revenue, these are the last 3 years by the way, combined. Man City grew by 92 million, Chelsea only 57 million, and Arsenal only 42 million, probably because Arsenal are, not as attractive a club as it used to be under Arsene Wenger. Another big source of revenue, of income, is the Premier League TV deal, which actually grew by 68% in the last 3 years, which is, I think these are unsustainable growth numbers, by the way, that's just my opinion. And this grew by 62 million pounds in the last 3 years, partly due to the new TV deal, and also because Liverpool actually improved their league position from 8th to 2nd under Jurgen Klopp. This success on the pitch meant that Liverpool's growth was again the highest of the big six. So we grew the Premier League TV deal revenue by 62 million, which is the highest. Chelsea second, 59 million. Man City third, 54 million. Again, these are the last 3 years of numbers. Tottenham 50 million, Man United 46, and Arsenal are last once again, 41 million. Another revenue growth is the European TV money. So the money that you get for going far in the Europa League, in the Champions League. This has grown significantly as well, rising from just 28 million to 98 million. So that's a 70 million pound growth in European TV money. Of course, because Liverpool reached two Champions League finals, we won the Champions League last season, and that has enabled 2 seasons ago, that has enabled Liverpool to significantly outpace Chelsea and Arsenal and close the gap with Manchester City. So even though Liverpool weren't in European competition in 2017, we still grew in the last 3 years almost by the most. 74 million was the growth of Tottenham, 70 million was Liverpool, 51 million Man United, 19 million Manchester City. Arsenal only 6 million and Chelsea 11 million. In the last 3 years also, Liverpool's commercial income has grown by 62% by 72 million pounds from 116 million to 188 million, which has helped close the gap to Manchester United, and due to new sponsorship deals, record sales in retail, and also contractual bonuses by, I think, the partners of Liverpool for winning the Champions League. So Liverpool in the last 3 years grew their commercial revenue by 72 million, only second to Tottenham with 77 million. Man United and Arsenal didn't grow much by 7 and 4 million. Man City grew by 49 million, and Chelsea are third with 63 million growth in this department. And the key to Liverpool's finances is that much of the revenue growth has been eaten up by higher costs. In fact, since 2015, so in the past 5 years, Liverpool's wages have grown 87%, so almost doubled. 144 million pounds. That's the margin that Liverpool's wages have grown by, at a faster rate than revenue, because revenue grew by 79% and wages have grown by 87%. And basically that is down to the fact that Liverpool have just signed better players and higher bonus payments for winning the Champions League, the Premier League, and also we signed world-class players like Fabinho, Alisson, Van Dijk, Naby Keita. So Liverpool's wage growth in the past 4 years is the highest in the Premier League, 144 million. That's just the growth. Man United are second with 129 million, Man City third, 121 million, Tottenham 78 million, Chelsea 70 million, and Arsenal only 40 million. So similarly, Liverpool FC player amortization, which is the annual charge to expense transfer fees over a player's contract, is up by 73%. It is up by 47 million pounds, from 65 million to 112 million since 2016. So this reflects investment in the team, but is still a lot lower than Chelsea's 168 million. Man United is third with 127 million, and Man City, with 127 million, Man United same, 126 million. But the player amortization growth is second for Liverpool with 47 million, and Chelsea are first with 97 million. So the profit and loss account does not tell the whole story of Liverpool's finances, as it only shows an accounting profit, which is very different from actual cash movements. Over the last 3 years, Liverpool had a 207 million pound profit, but only 29 million net cash inflow. We shall now look at where the rest of the money has gone. So for the cash flow statement, we need to strip out the non-cash accounting entries, both for player training, namely profit on player sales, player amortization and other depreciation, then adjust for working capital movements. At this stage, we need to understand how football club accounts for player training, both for purchases and sales, as the accounting treatment in the profit and loss account is quite different to the actual cash movements. Football clubs do not fully expense transfer fees in the year a player is purchased, but instead write off the cost evenly over the length of the player's contract via player amortization, while any profit made from selling players is immediately booked to the accounts. So if a player is purchased for 30 million pounds on a 5-year contract, the annual amortization in the accounts is 60 million. So the 30 million is divided by 5 years. I think that's pretty straightforward. This means that the player's book value reduces by 60 million every year. So after 3 years, his value in the accounts would be 12 million. If the player were to be sold at this point for 35 million, profit on player sales from an accounting perspective would be 23 million. So the sale proceeds of 35 million minus the remaining book value of 12 million. Given the rise in transfer fees, player amortization and is a major expense in the profit and loss account. However, as we have seen, it is relatively low at Liverpool. So over the last 3 years, they only add back 277 million to operating profit, compared to over 400 million at Manchester City, Man United and Chelsea. So we are way behind in terms of amortization and depreciation. Working capital measures short-term liquidity defined as current assets less current liabilities. Changes in working capital can cause operating cash flow to differ from net profit as clubs book revenue and expenses when they occur instead of when cash actually changes hands. So if current liabilities increase, the club is paying its suppliers more slowly, so is holding on to cash, positive cash flow. On the other hand, if a club's debtors increase, this means it collected less money from customers than it recorded as revenue, so it's negative for cash flow. Some clubs had large working capital movements. For example, Tottenham's cash flow benefited from a 197 million positive movement, increase in creditors, but Liverpool only had 16 million beneficial impact, while Chelsea's cash flow was adversely impacted by a 75 million negative movement, which is basically an increase in debtors. This is horribly technical but important for Liverpool, because as a result of these adjustments to the profit and loss account, other clubs' available cash has been boosted much more. For example, Liverpool's 293 million against Manchester City's 544 million. In this way, over the last 3 years, Liverpool's 15 million operating profit has been adjusted to give 307 million operating cash flow, while Manchester City's operating loss of 74 million becomes a much higher operative cash flow of 470 million. Tottenham's 640 million and Man United's 635 million had even more operating cash flow. This helps explain why Liverpool had much less money available to spend on players than their rivals despite their reported high profits. As a consequence, they only spent 147 million pounds cash net in the last 3 years, the second lowest in the Big Six, comprising of 425 million pound purchases minus 278 million pound sales. Liverpool have also spent 90 million on capital expenditure, including the main stand in the expansion, the new Kirkby training ground, which is built on the recommendation of Jurgen Klopp. This outlay is only reflected in the profit and loss account via depreciation, the second highest in the Big Six, though dwarfed by Tottenham's 1 billion investment in the new stadium. Liverpool's 129 million pound debt is much smaller than most of the Big Six, because Tottenham are in debt for 658 million, Man United 511 million, and Arsenal 209 million. So Liverpool could go into a lot higher debt and spend money on players, but Liverpool choose not to do so. And also their loans from the owners are interest-free, so they have only paid the 6 million pound interest in the last 3 years, compared to Man United. Listen to this. Man United in the last 3 years spent 53 million pounds on just interest. Tottenham spent 46 million pounds on just interest. Arsenal 34 million. So basically, I think that is the reason why Liverpool choose not to spend money. We could get a loan maybe from the owners or from a bank, but Liverpool really want to reduce the debt as much as possible, and we are in a very healthy financial position, and I trust Jurgen Klopp fully with this squad to compete for the Premier League title. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you found this video insightful. See you later, have a nice day, goodbye.